Okay. All right, Shavuot Tov, everyone. We are, I'm just going to share my screen. There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm just going to make a quick confession. I actually have braces in my mouth, and my springs, actually one of my springs just came out. So I'm kind of trying to navigate the hot potato in my mouth, literally almost trying to give a class. So I'm going to see how I can actually do this, because it's kind of difficult to talk, to be, for lack of a better explanation. So
תגדיל קצת את הכתב, קטן מדי, תעשה קצת יותר גדול.
I don't know if I can.
זה למטה בדרך כלל, איפה זה רגע?
I know, but I don't think this program allows me to.
Oh, okay, בסדר.
Okay. So either way, so I'm going to see how we do it time-wise.
Unmute.
Good? Yeah. Okay, so just because of this spring situation in my mouth, let's just see how long we can actually get done. Because I'm just saying that my spring just came out. So I've got an appointment tomorrow morning, first thing. But until then, we'll have to figure it out. And Baruch Hashem, we're going to actually talk about being done. So can you imagine I would be talking to you and you feel like I've got a hot potato in my mouth. You're saying, so what's the matter with this guy? And little did you know that he's got a bunch of springs in his mouth that's coming all over. So anyway, let's see how we do in terms of time. We might cut it a little bit shorter than usual. Let's just see how we do. So we are less than 11 days to Shavuot, very important and fundamental Chag to us as Jewish people. And we're not talking so much about the Chag today, because this class is specifically based around Pirkei Avot. The past few weeks we've been talking about, on Shabbatot and in the previous classes, the importance of midot, the importance of character development. And what's so unique about this period between Pesach and Shavuot is that this period is a time where one is supposed to work on their character development, 49 days between Pesach and Shavuot, where every day there's a Mishnah in the end of Masechet Avot which talks about a daily work, a daily exercise of working on something particular midah, particular character trait, to be able to get to the top of the ladder, which ultimately is the receiving of the Torah. We spoke about in the past also the students of Rabbi Akiva who passed away specifically in this period between Pesach and Shavuot. We have a tradition that stopped on Lag BaOmer, part of the reason why we celebrate Lag BaOmer. But it does, need some sort of more than just explanation. It kind of is there to frame what's happening during this period. And that this period is a time where the students of Rabbi Akiva who do not respect each other didn't actually work on these midot, obviously to their level, whatever that means. But the reason why it took place during this period is because this period is the time specifically where we are supposed to take this lesson and be able to use that to propel us forward to receive the Torah. So on Shabbat, I spoke a little bit about the connection between character development and Torah. And more importantly, that as we know, Mishnah and Pirkei Avot, Perek Gimel, Mishnah Yud Zayin, chapter 3, Mishnah 17. I don't have it up on the screen because everybody knows it so well. Im en or derech eretz kadma la Torah. If you don't have derech eretz, then this is really a waste of time. Because I've mentioned this so many times, but if a person's walking in the street and bumps into someone, what's going to happen? All right, get a bump, get a bruise. Person's going on a bike and bumps into someone, a little bit harder, it hurts a bit more. Person's going with a car, they say if you're driving 20 or 30, can be the difference between a fatal accident and not. Can you imagine someone's going 70 and Chas Shalom crashes into someone? And can you imagine a person in an F-16 and veering off a tiny bit? So if a person's character is not developed appropriately, then if a person is studying Torah without that character development or character refinement, then you can imagine that whole Torah is now exactly straight, but exactly crooked. So you can grow a tree to be straight like this, or you can grow a tree to be straight exactly the wrong way. And that's why without Torah, without midot to combine with Torah, it's not a secondary thing. It's something which has to work in tandem. Because without that, we have a crooked Torah. Chas shalom, that is the worst thing. And that is why during this period, the students of Rabbi Akiva, who were supposed to be the transmitters of Torah, were specifically the ones who, because, again, to their level, they weren't able to work on themselves the right way, then God said, I'd rather have a world without Torah, as the Gemara says in Yevamot. V'haya ha'olam shamem. The world was desolate from Torah. Why? Because all those 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva passed away. Until Rabbi Akiva the great Rabbi Akiva went to the 5 students, one of them being Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and reinvigorate Torah in the world. But what does that tell us? That God would rather not have Torah in this world than to have a Torah which is crooked. It's a very, very powerful message. And that is in en derech eretz in Torah. It means derech eretz kadma Torah. If you don't have derech eretz, then you're kind of out. And that's the thing which the Bartanura says, very first Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. Moshe received Torah from Sinai. And everybody asks the famous question. It doesn't say, seemingly the grammar is incorrect. If I ask you, where did Moshe Rabbeinu receive the Torah? You'll tell me at Sinai. If I ask you, where did Moshe Rabbeinu get the Torah from? What will you tell me?
From Hashem.
Oh, but you won't tell me Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. What, from the mountain he received the Torah? That seemingly just doesn't make sense. It should be either Moshe kibel Torah be Sinai, at Sinai, or Moshe kibel Torah me'akadosh baruch Hu. Moshe received the Torah from God. But to say Moshe kibel Torah mi Sinai, from Sinai, almost makes no sense. And the Bartanura, who is one of the most fundamental commentators on Pirkei Avot, and a very basic level one. To get to next levels, you really have to know Bartanura. And he says, and not that he's level one, he's the incredible amount of depth and wisdom in the Bartanura's commentary is incredible, but just a basic fundamental. He says like this: Moshe kibel Torah miSinai is based on the Midrash. Midrash says very famously that all the little kids sing in kindergarten. I am a mountain so very tall. There was a whole discussion. Which mountain will the Torah be given on? Will it be on the Har Gavnim, Har Bashan, the big mountain, the broad mountain? And little Har Sinai thought it wasn't going to be me because I'm so small compared to the other big, large, grandiose mountains. And God said, no, I want to give it specifically on little Har Sinai, because little Har Sinai has humility. And that is so a key to be able to receive a Torah. Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. Number one, before you start, you've got to have humility. You've got to have your character development refined, because if you're not, Torah is just going to go way, way off. And that is our introduction to today's class. And what I want to kind of do today is really take one other Mishnah in Pirkei Avot and just discuss it a little bit based on some portions of Talmud. It's not something which I usually do this type of style class, but I think you'll enjoy it. So here we go. Mishnah in Avot said as follows. Again, it's not up on the screen. It's quite a well-known Mishnah. Very simple. Im en Torah, en derech eretz. If there's no Torah, there's no derech eretz. This is chapter 3, Mishnah 17. Perek Gimel, Mishnah Yud Zayin, Pirkei Avot. If there's no Torah, there is no derech eretz. On the flip side, Im en derech eretz en Torah. That's kind of a bit of a hybrid. And the famous question, which many people ask, is, why do I need Torah? I mean, I could tell you, I know some very, very nice, pleasant, good people who are not Jewish, who are not religious, just generally refined people, refined characters. So what do I need the Torah and the mitzvot for? Seemingly, I'm good to go. I have a good midot, go to school, learn to be a good Canadian, good Samaritan. Why do I need to have Torah and mitzvot? Why does the Mishnah say, Im en Torah, en derech eretz? Im en derech eretz, en Torah. Why does it seem to be so connected that I can't have one without the other? I think there's a lot to say on this subject, and really, it's a whole fundamental to be able to even begin to grasp what's going on over here. But I want to kind of see if we can knock at this a tiny bit. I'm just going to close the door over here because there's a lot of noise in the background. Sorry. So the simple answer to this huge question is maybe not so simple at all. But let's take it like this. Everything in life is relative. And one of the things that we have to understand is that sometimes we may view something without recognizing what it actually is and the power that lays therein. So I'll give you an example. Many people take ben adam lechaviro, stuff which is between man and man. Mitzvot, commandments, kindness, chesed, tikkun olam, which is used very loosely and not, perhaps maybe not to the nth degree. But there is so much to grasp on as people that people generally kind of take this as something which they want to focus on as a whole. And the reason simply is because when you see instant results, it's much easier to internalize. Give an example. If you're kind to someone, it makes you feel good. It makes the other person feel good. It feels right. Whereas when it comes to other mitzvot, there are certain things which are perhaps not so that the messaging or the underlying undercurrent is much more subtle. And if you even look at the different mitzvot in the Torah, then sometimes one thing which we may view as the top of the ladder, in terms of, let's say, even just in terms of punishment, for example, because we don't have really rewards in this world. So the Torah doesn't really express other than in two places: kibud avim, honoring one's parents, and
the bird and the eggs.
Shiluach haken, very good. The removal of the mother's egg from the nest, which is a whole discussion in its own right. But we don't have reward in this world because rewards in the next world. You can't give somebody cheap change. Yeah, we understand that our actions are so impressionable on the world, on the universe, that to say, you're going to get another 10 years to your life, that's cheap compared to what we're going to get in the world to come. But we do have a certain measure in terms of negative repercussions, certain punishments a person gets if there was a time when there was a Bet Din, for example, or Sanhedrin. There was even capital punishment back in the day. Although Bet Din almost never killed anyone. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin that a Bet Din that killed one person more than 70 years, more than once in 70 years, is called a Bet Din Ketala, a killer Bet Din. Can you imagine? Because to be able to be killed for a crime committed, to be able to have capital punishment as a result, the person has to have two kosher witnesses, had to be cross-examined. had to be very clear to the person's doing it on purpose. The person had to be able to internalize and verbalize that he actually knows that he's being warned, and so on and so forth. It's just like a whole long list, and really kind of almost very difficult for a person to be in that situation. Talk about dan lekaf zechut, just kind of being there for somebody else and recognizing that there's an environment, there's a upbringing, there's a culture, there's so many moving parts to telling someone you've done something wrong. But just the concept of having repercussions does give us a bit of a broad sense of what is maybe on the higher level of hierarchy. So, whether it's, let's say, keeping Shabbat versus giving tzedakah, for example, there's just different levels. And so the truth is, there's many things which people view because they can see the result, and people are unaware of other stuff because they just don't see it. So, give an example. If we would have these colorful glasses, which will be able to fine-tune our understanding or fine-tune our vision towards rays, yeah? So all the rays that come out of telephones, all the radiation that comes out of, microwaves, from the sun, whatever it is. If we would walk around and see those waves in front of us, we'd probably go nuts. So sometimes God actually blessed us with limited vision that we don't have microscopic eyes, because we probably wouldn't eat vegetables either, right? So there's so much which we don't see that if we have an understanding and perhaps a certain level of emunah, faith and humility to understand there are things that we don't understand. When you have Torah, it was given to us by God himself to dictate, to tell us this is important, but this is perhaps on a higher level. That is what it means, Imen Torah and Derech Eretz. Exactly. I'll give you just thinking now of a random example. Maybe it'll help explain. Rambam talks about the very famous principle. I once heard a woman give a lecture. I think she's a professor in SFU, if I remember correctly. I heard it a couple of years ago in one of the Hebrew free loan luncheon or something. I once heard her. She gave a presentation about happiness. And she was talking about the concept of tzedakah. That if you give tzedakah, it actually makes you into a happier person. Because when you give to somebody else, it's not only about yourself, you're not egocentric, but giving actually creates a certain level of content, of kindness, creates happiness. People pay, the industry today of entertainment is billions and billions of dollars because people are looking for one thing. People are looking for happiness and connection. When you give tzedakah, you get both. Tzedakah, by the way, Rav Moshe Feinstein says, like there's a Torah obligation to give tithe, a tenth of your earnings, there's also an obligation to tithe from your time. Give 10% of your time to yourself, to somebody else. Tzedakah. You don't think of it that way. It's such a beautiful thing. Contribute to an organization, contribute to the local food depot, JFSA. I mean, it's non-stop. To your local synagogue, your local community. Be there to help with whatever. It's just, that's tzedakah. Just be happier. But Rambam says something beautiful. It's just such a beautiful point. So Rambam says like this: if you've got an opportunity, just take it small. Give $100 to one person, or to give every day $1 to 100 people. What's better? Famous question, not so famous. Most people, on average, would tell you that it makes no sense to give $1 in terms of tzedakah to 100 people because you're never going to help any of those 100 people. Give $100 to one person. That will make most sense because you're actually going to help that person and change that person's life, hopefully, or at least that person's day. Rambam says different. Rambam says No. Hilchot tzedakah mandates rather give $1 to 100 people. You ask me, what do you mean? What's the point? I'm not going to help anyone. Said the Rambam, something so beautiful, that tzedakah is not only about the chesed you're giving for somebody else. It's not only about the kindness that you're showing somebody else that you care about them, but it's also about showing the importance of our own character development. When I give $100 to one person and I say, be done with it, guess what? That is the cheapest way of doing tzedakah. But when I go ahead and I actually every day have to think about, I'm going to actually pull out $1 out of my pocket. I'm in a rush. I've got no time. I need to run. I have to change money in the bank to actually have a coin. Who does coins nowadays? Like who, you don't have a credit card? I'm sorry, I can't give you money. To change me as a person would be much more important to give $1 a day. It's just such a mind-boggling concept. And this is where it comes down. Im en Torah en derech eretz. Torah without character development is not worth it. God says, I don't want it because it can go so badly wrong. Like the students of Rabbi Akiva who passed away because they didn't refine the character. And that transmission of Torah will be a warped transmission. I'd rather not have that, says God. But to understand what character development is, you need to have Torah. You need to have the guidebook. And that's when the Mishnah says, Im en Torah en derech eretz. If there's no Torah, there's no derech eretz. There's no character development. But if there's en derech eretz, en Torah. If there's no character development, there's no Torah. So it's this hybrid, but the hybrid's got the model of the manufacturer's manual. How do I do it? Do I give $100 to one guy? Or do I give $1 to 100 people? How do I have that guidebook? Through this setup, through the Torah. And that's really this period, like I mentioned before, is Pirkei Avot that we read 6 weeks in Pesach Shavuot. We have this period where we work on ourselves. Every day we look through the Mishnayot, such timely wisdom. You just flick through Mishnah Avot. It's just mind-boggling. There's so many self-help books out there today. You know what? We have it. We have it packaged so beautifully. There's so many different translations today. So many beautiful commentaries. Just take 5 minutes a day. Open up Pirkei Avot. Just flip through it. Guaranteed to find something which will tickle your fancy. And that's take the money back. Money back guaranteed if you don't. There's Pirkei Avot. It's just such timely wisdom. Each Mishnah is pearls upon pearls, diamonds upon diamonds. Teach us how to live our life the right way. So I just want to share with you 2-3 Gemaras, which I think really kind of brings home this point, besides for the fact that the Gemara in itself has a whole class in its own right. We can spend really on each Gemara literally an entire class. We'll see how much we can do to really bring down this message. The Gemara in Shabbat is up on the screen, source 1, Shabbat Kuf Chav Zayin 127. Tan Rabbanan, the rabbis taught us. Hadan Chavero Lekaf Zechut, by the way, also Mishnah Pirkei Avot, someone who judges others favorably, someone we all want others to judge us favorably, Danin Oto L'Zchut. He himself, or her herself, will be judged favorably. When you judge others favorably, you are judged favorably. If you're a kind person, people will be kind to you. If you're kind with other people and say, maybe they've had a bad day, maybe they've had a situation which is overwhelming, and that's why this and this happened, then people will also give you the benefit of the doubt because you're a nice person who generally understands other people. So why are you acting off today? Well, must be that person's got something going on. Hadan chavro lekaf zechut. If someone judges others favorably, that that person will be judged favorably by other people. The Gemara relates a very famous incident, made famous by Talmud, by the Gemara. The Gemara says as follows. Let's read very quickly through it. Maaseh ba'adam echad, certain fellow, she'arad migalil ha'elyon, who descended from the upper Galilee, v'niskar etzel balabait echad b'darom shalosh shanim. And he was hired by a certain homeowner in the south for 3 years. Erev Yom Kippurim comes to payday. On the eve of the Day of Atonement, so it's not just like any day. It's like, don't mess me around. It's the day of Erev Yom Kippur. Everyone wants to do mitzvot. It's like really a time where, if somebody owes money, if there's any outstanding monies, the person should pay. We don't want to go into Yom Kippur with any debts. Amar lo, he tells the balabait, tells the owner, give me the money, my wages which you owe me. I'll go feed my wife and children. Simple request, very fair. Amar lo en li me'ot. I'm sorry, I don't have any money. All right, Amar lo, very understanding sort of fellow. Tenli perot. All right, can you at least give me produce? Payment in the form of produce. At least I can go home with something. Oh, no, Eli, I'm sorry, I don't have. Tenli karka. Eli, give me some sort of land, real estate. I don't have. Tenli behema. Give me animals in lieu of payment. Eli, I don't have. Tenli karim uksatot. Again, really desperate now. Give me some pillows, blankets, something. I can maybe sell it. And you don't have. Hifshil kelav la'achorav. He slung his tools over his shoulder. He went home, in anguish. Very sad. I think nowadays we would term it as perhaps maybe depressed. So, after the festival, after Yom Kippur, after Sukkot, the homeowner goes and took the workers' wages in his hand. And with him, 3 donkeys worth laden of stuff. One was laden with food, one was laden with drink, one was laden with other good goodies. He goes to his house. So they sit down, they eat, they drink. Amarlo, so the homeowner turns around to this fellow, the worker, and he says, when you told me, give me money, pay my wages. And I said, I don't have money. But what do you think? I'm a wealthy guy. But, you've been working in my land for 3 years. I can obviously sustain you. What were you thinking? So the fellow said, Amarti shema pragmatia bezol nizam. Right? Said, listen, maybe you had a good deal and you had an opportunity to purchase some sort of merchandise. And, you spent all your money. It's your hard cash. Right? So give me animals. And I said, I don't have. What do you think? He said, I thought perhaps the animals were hired out to other people. So what about when I told you I don't have, you asked me for land, and I said I don't have land. What do you think? What do you suspect of me? I said, perhaps the land was actually, leased out to other people. And when I said to you, I don't have fruit, you said, maybe they weren't tithed, so you couldn't give it. You're not supposed to give fruit until you tithe it. What about when I said, I don't even have blankets or cushions? I said, maybe you had, what do you think of me? I said, maybe you had actually gone ahead and consecrated all your property to the Beit Mikdash or something. Amarlo, he said to him, ha'avodah, it's like a vow. Kachaya, trust me, it's exactly what happened. Every single story, as you said it, was exactly how it happened. I had a son, I wanted him to study, I wanted him to be a bit more serious about his learning. So I said, you know what, I'm going to I'm going to give all my stuff away, basically. I made a vow not to give it to anyone, just give it away. When I came to my friends in the south, they actually said, you know what, they'll absolve me from an Nedarim. It was the whole story, exactly what happened with the son of Hyrcanus. Ve'ata, and now, and you, just like you actually judged me favorably, Elohim, God should judge you favorably. Okay, beautiful story in the Talmud. Don't know if I would have said the same thing if somebody didn't pay me for 3 years and I'm trying to make some money for my wife and kids. And, you know, at least blankets. Come on, give me the pillows in your house. Like, come on. Like, all right, we've got down from the real estate, from the cash, you know, from the animals, the fields. I understand you might not want to give me, but something.
Well, I have a problem with this, of course, because what about lo talin scharo? You should not withhold back salary. And yet 3 years it didn't pay him. How dare you?
Very good question. Very good question. So lo talin is a mitzvah d'oraita. A person pays salary on time, on the day. But there is such a thing that a person can have an arrangement with the person. So for example, you have someone working in your house. He's making you a new kitchen. Do you have to pay him every night? Well, really you should. You shouldn't leave empty-handed, especially a day worker. But there is such a thing as that the worker makes an arrangement with you. You know what? In 3 months' time, when I'm finished the kitchen, you know, the whole thing, flooring, the ceiling, and everything, then I'll pay you. Half now, half later, whatever. There's such a thing. So we can get around all those nitty-gritty problems. And like I said, the truth is, this Gemara has so much in it. Each line actually has so much in it. But I want to bring out this point for the purpose of today's class. There is a Shilt Bechai, which is one of the very highly, what's the word? A source which is very credible, highly credible source, which says, we want to know who are these people. So we know from the end of the story who the homeowner was. He was a great guy. He had a great son who eventually made his way back to the path of Torah. Again, another long story. But who was this worker? And the Shilta says the name of the worker was someone very famous, who we all very familiar with.
Hyrcanus.
No, Hyrcanus was the homeowner, right? Who was the worker? Who was the one that was always done lekav zechut? Who was always there to be able to judge this homeowner so favorably? This guy is incredible. Says the Shel Derechai, the name of this person was none other than
Rabbi Akiva?
Chazaku Baruch, Rabbi Akiva.
Well, because he didn't start learning Torah till he was 40 years old.
Oh.
So he was a poor man, although he married a woman of means.
Who, by the way, her father cut her out the will when she married Akiva. A similar story, she cut her out the will, and only later he put her back when he saw what a great rabbi he was.
Well, she had riches of a different kind coming her way.
Rachel, famous Rachel. Eshet Rabbi Akiva was an incredible woman. We know this. Again, we can give a whole class just on Rachel, the wife of Rabbi Akiva, just the foresight to be able to see someone. Rabbi Akiva, let me give you the context. Rabbi Akiva as a person, as Ellen pointed out correctly, only began to study Torah at 40 years old. Famous Gemara, Avanim shechakumayim, he saw the water, dripping on the stone, and he said if water can drip every day, a tiny bit at a time, and have such an impact, they can penetrate the stone, then all the more so, a heart of stone, Torah, can penetrate one by one and really become, have such an impact on the person. That's the story of Rabbi Akiva, and he decided he's going to go study Torah. And he asked Rachel to marry him, and the rest is history. He came up with 24,000 students. But Rabbi Akiva as a person, till he was 40 years old, the Gemara says something fascinating. You might think, well, Rabbi Akiva, a great guy. The Gemara says Rabbi Akiva was someone who said, "Ten li talmid chacham, bring me a Torah scholar, v'anashchenu kechamor, and I will bite him like a donkey." And the Gemara explains why like a donkey. Bites him like a dog. Why like a donkey? Because a donkey doesn't just bite the skin off the food, it grinds the bones. So Rabbi Akiva, I want to get this guy and I want to kind of really grind him down. This is who Rabbi Akiva was. Incidentally, this story took place before Rabbi Akiva became Rabbi Akiva. But what we want to point out today is, one second. So if this story took place before Rabbi Akiva became Rabbi Akiva, look at that. Rabbi Akiva, who hates rabbis, can't stand their guts, wants to grind them, yet he's got the most incredible midot. He's got the most incredible character traits, which you don't find every day. He is able to be done l'kaf zechut in such an extreme way. He can judge others favorably in so many different at personal expense. So you might tell me what's going on. What do I need im ein Torah and derech eretz? I've got Rabbi Akiva, who is the ultimate example of what Torah is. And even before he began to learn Torah, he's got incredible midot.
No, actually, Rabbi, I would say that he's the epitome of derech eretz, not of Torah. And hence, he was thus able and ready, although only at the age of 40, to actually begin to study Torah. So he's a beautiful example of how derech eretz is fundamental. Right?
Right. But that would make sense, that part of the Mishnah. Im en derech eretz and Torah. So it means almost as a foundation, you need to have derech eretz. Rabbi Akiva is the ultimate example because Rabbi Akiva was one of the greatest transmitters of Torah. We said before, even the story of the 24,000 students who kind of didn't internalize the message of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says, Zeh klal v'ahavta kamocha, zeh klal gadol b'Torah. That's Rabbi Akiva. His students didn't get it. The whole discussion, do you say before they died, you say after they died? Not for now. But the concept of Rabbi Akiva, of who he was, the Midrash says, it was brought down in the Talmud, that when Moshe Rabbeinu was going to give the Torah, coming up to Shavuot, God looked through all the different generations, who can be the ultimate Moser HaTorah? Can you imagine the teacher who's going to give over, transmit Torah to the Jewish nation for eternity? Who's that going to be? And Moshe Rabbeinu is looking through the camera lens, and he sees Rabbi Akiva in many generations' time. He says to God, I'm not the right person. Wait for Rabbi Akiva. He is, in fact, Doresh Kitre Otiyot, the Gemara says. You know, the little crowns on top of the certain letters in the Sefer Torah, there's like the little, like three kind of pointy little things. And the Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva is able to even use that to be able to kind of get a certain understanding why it's on that letter, why it's in that place, and so on and so forth. Says Moshe Rabbeinu, give it through him. God said, no, I want you to do it, for whatever reason. But in terms of who Rabbi Akiva was as the transmitter of Torah, the ultimate. But I don't need that. Imen derech eretz and Torah, according to Ellen, it's very correct. We have the foundation, and maybe because he had that foundation, it sounds like from this Gemara, Rabbi Akiva was able to become what he can become. But the question which we're trying to tackle today, because that's an easy one. I think that, although we know everybody likes to speak about that, we know that Imen derech eretz and Torah. Because derech eretz kadman Torah, you can't be a mensch. No one's going to learn from you if you're not a mensch. No one's going to want to learn from you if you're not a mensch. You know, I mentioned on Shabbat, Reb Chaim Volozhin says something so harsh, but so true. He talks about people who do chesed, kindness for so many other people. When they come home, their spouse, their kids, busy shouting, they're busy acting like who knows what. He says all the chesed and all the things which a person does is worth nothing in Shamayim. So Reb Chaim Vital, a student of the Arizal. Why? He says because all that chesed which you do is clearly just for the public. It's just so you should get a pat on the back, people should like you. The true chesed is when behind closed doors. Nobody knows you're screaming at your spouse, your husband, your wife, your kid, whoever it is, those closest to you, how you treat your friends. That is the real, true litmus test. So I think, again, coming back to what you're saying, Ellen, 100%, in en derech eretz and Torah, no question about it. The problem which we want to deal with today is the other part of the Mishnah. In en Torah, in derech eretz. Why can't I just be a good Samaritan? Why do I need the Torah to guide me in this? What's it going to add for me? And I think there's something so beautiful in this Gemara hidden so quietly. But I just want to kind of bring you one more Gemara, which also Ellen pointed out the Rachel, the wife of Rabbi Akiva. So I just kind of want to point out another Gemara, which also kind of gives us a bit of an indication of where Rabbi Akiva was at. Because, tell me, well, how do you know the story took place before Rabbi Akiva became so learned? Maybe it was after. So I'll bring a Gemara in Ketubah. Talmud in Ketubah, Samach Bet Amud Bet, 62b, says as follows. Rabbi Akiva Ra'ad ben Kalba Savua. Akiva was a shepherd of Ben Kalba Savua. Ben Kalba Savua was one of the three great philanthropists who live in Jerusalem, who could have sustained the entire Jerusalem, entire population, throughout the siege of the Romans. That means there would be no Churban Bet Mikdash, there would be no destruction of the Holy Temple, if not for the fact that the people within, shall we say, didn't burn down all the storehouses. Okay, that's a story for another time, maybe Tisha B'Av. Says the Gemara, Chazite Barate, the daughter of Ben Kalba Savua, she was a smart woman. Why? Because she saw Rabbi Akiva, Gavatznia Umala. He was humble and refined. She recognized that trait. And she said to him, if I get betrothed you, I get married to you, you're going to go study. She realized that, he's got all the character to be able to make the makings of a great person. It just needs to kind of be shaped. Said, if you go study, I'll get married to you. You agree? Say, sure. I mean, daughter of the billionaires of the city. She got married quietly, because if her father would find out about this guy, he's done. She sent him off to study. Shama Avua, father heard, kicked him out. She moved her from his house and took a vow prohibiting her from benefiting from his property. So she now became from, talking about rags to riches, from riches to rags. Literally, the Gemara talks about in the very old Gemara how Rabbi Akiva was with her and they didn't even barely had straw to sleep on, and it was a whole situation. Anyway, after he had to trace creation in, he went to study at 12 years, and he came back with 12,000 students, and he went back for another 12 years, and he came back with another 12,000 students, the 24,000 students that we just spoke about. What do we see from this Gemara? This is before he went to study. But there he already had this beautiful character trait of being humble, of being refined. So what is this business of him and Torah and Derech Eretz? Why do you need the Torah? What is the mitzvahs, the mitzvah in general? How are they going to impact us to make us better people, to make us have more of a refined character? Just going to close the door again, sorry. So, last few minutes that we have, I heard this from someone, I forgot his name, but it's just like, I love it. It's just like, you can take a Gemara and just read it as a beautiful story, and sometimes you can just gloss over like one or two words. And I think there's something so beautiful in this.
Oh yeah, that's a famous story of Rabbi Akiva laughing, yeah.
Yeah, very good. So I need to ready ahead of the game. So here we go. There's another famous Gemara. Another portion of the Talmud, Makot, Daf 24b. Famous story of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, who is, they're going up to Jerusalem. This is after the temple's been destroyed. And they come to Har Tzofim, come to Mount Scopus, and they tear their garments, as the halacha is, when it's like a person's state of mourning when he sees the Temple Mount. It was with a group, another few rabbis, came, we saw the Har Habayit, the Temple Mount. They saw a fox that emerged from the site of the Kodesh Kodeshim. Such a sight can tear a person's heart open. Can you imagine? The place of the holiest of holies is now there's animals roaming around. Out of the blue, Rebbe Kiva metzachek. Rebbe Kiva bursts out laughing. They look at the rabbi, and Rebbe Kiva says, "What's the matter with you? We're all crying. Why are you laughing?" So as every good rabbi would do, ask a question, you get a question back. So why are you crying? I'll tell you why I'm laughing. You tell me why you're crying. So I'm not going to read out the whole Gemara. He says, listen, the place, the holiest of holies, where the high priest can go on Yom Kippur, and then you see there's the Yeshaya, the Isaiah, the prophet, prophesizes this is what's going to happen. Shualim yel chubo. Al har Tzion sheshamem. This is what we read in Echa on Tisha B'Av, that there's going to be this kind of situation where the place will be desolate. So that's why we're crying. So Rebbe Kiva answered them back. He said, that's exactly why I'm laughing. That's why I'm laughing. He said, because I know that there's the prophecies of Isaiah and the prophecy of Micha and all those that prophesied about the destruction of the temple. They also prophesied, Zechariah, that one day there'll be the elderly men, elderly women sitting in the streets of Jerusalem. He said, I know if one nevuah, one prophecy has been sustained and been fulfilled, I know those prophecies are linked, and the other prophecies for sure to be fulfilled. Rabbi Kiva was the ultimate person who had that vision of taking a situation and turning it around and seeing the good in the situation. It's so bad. The foxes are coming out. Everything's desolate. The Har Tzion is so bad. Look at that. If that prophecy has been fulfilled, there's hope. Look what's going to happen. We're going to have a Geulah. Mashiach's going to come. There's going to be a Binyan Bet HaMikdash. There's going to be a third temple. Amrulo, Akiva nichamtani. Akiva nichamtanu. Said to him, Akiva, you have comforted us. Akiva, you have comforted us.
So we have sovereignty now in Yerushalayim. We have sovereignty in Israel. So the nevuah came true.
As they call it, the Atchalta de Geula. We're not there yet. At the beginning, Bezrat Hashem. Through our learning and through our Torah and through our mitzvot and through our chesed and through all the good things and our tefillot, Bezrat Hashem, one day we'll have Mashiach and we'll have the third Bet HaMikdash with all its glory. There won't be anti-Semitism. And that's what we believe in. That's part of our faith, that we will have Tchiat HaMetim. All the people, our loved ones, will be returned to us. And that's incredible stuff. We have hope. We, the Jewish people, have been through the ringer. We've always been able to cling on to hope because we have that hope. But coming back to our point, I think there is such a beautiful thing to learn from this Gemara. There's one very subtle difference between the early Rebbe Kiva, pre-rabbi, pre-Talmid Chacham, pre-Torah scholar, and the Gemara in Makot, the Rabbi Rebbe Kiva that we know of, after he studied. Rebbe Kiva pre-Talmid Chacham had incredibly refined character traits. Gemara says he was refined, he was humble, he was able to be dan lekaf zechut everyone, he was able to, even at his own personal expense, be able to judge everyone favorably, look at the good. Same Rebbe Kiva, always this kind of consistent theme. Look at the good. Look at hope. 24,000 students died. He's there. He's back in. He didn't give up. 24,000 students died. He's be depressed for life. Goes again. Finds 5 new students, which rejuvenate Torah we have today is because of them. Imagine Rebbe Kiva would have just given up. Spent his whole life educating 24. Can you imagine? Just to kind of give you an understanding. 24,000 people there's no yeshiva today with 24,000 students. Yeah, just the biggest yeshiva in Eretz Israel today is about 8,000 students. Lakewood is another 7,000. You put probably all the yeshiva together, you probably still wouldn't get 24,000 students of the level of Rebbe Kiva students. And they all died within 33 days. That's kind of wild. It's enough to put someone in depression for life. But here's the thing. Look at this beautiful Gemara. There's one piece which is different. The before Rebbe Akiva and the after Rebbe Akiva. In the story of the work, when he was working and he was down like a zchut, he was judging favorably, he adds in one line of it, a random line which seemingly doesn't really have any relevance to the story. He swung his tools on his shoulders, v'halach lebeto b'pachei nefesh. And he went to his home depressed, anguished, down. Now look at this. This is the refined Rebbe Akiva, the one who's got character development, but without Torah. You know what happened? When he used all his midot. He did all the tricks in the book. It worked, and it's genuine. It's not fake. It's genuine. But he was depressed as a result. Now look at the Gemara, Rebbe Akiva afterwards. We know our Gemara of the 24,000 students that I just mentioned. But look at the story of Rebbe Akiva after he studied Torah, where he sees destruction, he sees desolation, and in that, Rebbe Akiva, through the lens of the Torah, the holy Rebbe Akiva, the transmitter of Torah, sees opportunity, sees hope, sees a future. I think that's so beautiful. He laughs. What the other rabbis don't recognize, he recognizes. I think it's such a beautiful twist to this concept. Now, you could argue, I'm just bringing out a concept I heard. It's a very beautiful idea, but I think it really drives us home. Iman derech eretz and Torah. If there's no derech eretz, we don't refine our character, forget it. We can close the book already. And that's our job every single day, especially through this period, when the students of Rebbe Akiva who didn't internalize this message, we have to go ahead and every day do that little bit extra, that $1, that bit of our time to invest with other people. How do I make myself a better person at home with the people that I'm surrounded with my friends, my children, my family, whoever it is. But then there's also in Torah and Derech Eretz, because the guidebook which God gave us is this guidebook, which not only tells us what to do, but also points out for us, where is the hierarchy? What does it look like? What I think maybe is instant gratification because I feel good when I'm nice to somebody else. Maybe that's one level, but maybe there's a higher level to that. Maybe there are other things which the Torah recognizes as a person should work on higher. And that is what Pirkei Avot does, is in Ein Torah and Derech Eretz. Without the guidebook, a person can have a warped understanding of what chesed is. Unfortunately, we know the Nazis, if we take an extreme example, were the ultimate example of the most humane nation. The people that were most put together, they were developed as a country, and they got to the depths based on humanity. Hitler had a very strong argument. It wasn't just, he had an argument that the Jews are filth and they are going to mess up the world. We have a problem. We have to implement the final solution to eradicate these gypsies, Jews, anybody who's kind of lower level, according to his understanding. If you have midot, but you don't refine it in the way that the guidebook from HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, in Ein Torah and Derech Eretz, we can't truly have real midot. We can't truly have midot which will last to have true tikkun olam, real understanding of how we're going to create this world to be a better place. If we do that, and we're able to use our Pirkei Avot and our Torah, which guide us in our mitzvot, 630 commandments, maybe overwhelming. But you know what? If you know how to use the system, it's just easier to work through. You can live your whole life on first gear. And you can go up the hill and down the hill and trug along. You can get places, you really can. But you can go up to second gear, third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear, even sixth gear. And you can live a better and happier life. Okay, what's up there?
And one more thing, Rabbi Akiva epitomizes, and that is, Al tadun et chavercha ad shegata lemkomo. Don't judge your fellow man until you're standing in his spot.
Mm-hmm.
And he's demonstrated it right here.
That's right. Beautiful. So beautiful. The whole thing is so beautiful from every level.
Rabbi, Tov.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ela Tov.
Good night.